Evelyn Carter believed in steady love, the kind that grew quietly and held firm through routine. 5 years of marriage had taught her that happiness did not always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it came as folded laundry, shared dinners, and the comfort of knowing someone would be home at the end of the day. Daniel Carter had once promised her exactly that. He still wore the face of a devoted husband in public, still reached for her hand at family gatherings, still spoke of our future with casual certainty. From the outside, their marriage looked complete, but Daniel's world moved fast. He worked long hours, carried his phone like an extension of his body, and often answered emails while Evelyn spoke about her day. She noticed, of course. She also forgave it. Love, she told herself, required patience. Every marriage had seasons of imbalance, and she was willing to carry more weight for a while. When Daniel kissed her forehead before leaving for work, she chose to believe it meant everything was fine. Lena Brooks knew this version of Evelyn better than anyone. They had been friends since college, bound by late-night conversations and shared dreams of adulthood. Lena had stood beside Evelyn on her wedding day, holding the bouquet and blinking back tears. Over the years, she became a constant presence in the Carters' life. Weekend brunches, holiday dinners, spontaneous visits when Daniel was working late. Evelyn trusted Lena without hesitation. She never questioned why Lena seemed to know Daniel's schedule as well as she did, or why Daniel's tone softened whenever Lena asked for a favor. Trust, once given fully, rarely pauses to examine itself. There were small moments Evelyn dismissed without comment. Daniel laughing too long at something Lena said. A message notification he flipped face down when she entered the room. Lena's sudden discomfort when Evelyn mentioned future plans, like trying for a baby or moving to a quieter neighborhood. None of it formed a clear picture. It was only noise, easily drowned out by years of loyalty. Margaret Carter, Daniel's mother, noticed more. She watched with the quiet attention of someone who had lived long enough to recognize patterns. During Sunday dinners, she observed how Daniel spoke to Evelyn with distracted affection, and how Lena filled the silences too quickly, as if afraid of what might surface if she didn't. Margaret said nothing. Advice offered too early often went unheard. Evelyn's days followed a careful rhythm. She worked at a design firm, came home before Daniel, and prepared dinner even when she wasn't sure he would make it. On evenings when Lena joined her, the apartment filled with conversation and the illusion of companionship. Lena complained about her loneliness, about feeling left behind while everyone else built families. Evelyn listened, sympathetic and unaware that comfort could sometimes blur into dependence. One evening, Daniel came home later than usual. His tie was loosened, his expression tense. He barely touched his food, excusing himself to take a call on the balcony. Evelyn watched him through the glass, his back turned, his voice lowered. When he returned, he apologized quickly and kissed her cheek. She accepted it, though a faint unease settled in her chest. She wondered when apologies had replaced explanations. Lena began staying longer after dinner, lingering until the clock edged toward midnight. She offered to help with dishes, asked Daniel about his work with a curiosity that felt almost intimate. Evelyn noticed how easily they spoke, how natural it seemed. She told herself it was harmless. After all, Lena was family in every way that mattered. On a quiet Saturday afternoon, Evelyn returned home early after a canceled meeting. The apartment was still, the air heavy with the warmth of an unfinished day. She set her bag down and walked toward the bedroom, already thinking about changing into something comfortable. Halfway down the hallway, she heard Daniel's voice from the study, low and strained. He was on the phone. "I can't keep doing this," he said, pacing. "It's getting complicated." Evelyn paused. Daniel never used that tone with colleagues. She leaned slightly closer, her heart quickening despite her effort to stay calm. "No, I know," he continued. "I just need time. She can't find out like this." Evelyn's breath caught. She told herself it was work, that she was imagining things. Yet her feet refused to move. The silence that followed felt deliberate, heavy with words unsaid. When Daniel finally hung up and opened the door, surprise flickered across his face before he masked it with a smile. "You're home early," he said. She nodded, studying him. Meeting was canceled. Good, he replied too quickly. We can have dinner together tonight. Evelyn forced a smile and turned away, her mind racing. She didn't ask who he had been speaking to. She didn't accuse. Years of trust held her tongue. Still, the unease grew roots. That night, as she lay awake beside him, listening to his steady breathing, Evelyn stared at the ceiling and wondered when certainty had slipped into doubt. She thought of Lena's recent silences, Daniel's distance, the words she had overheard. None of it proved anything. Yet together it formed a question she could no longer ignore. In the darkness, Evelyn reached for Daniel's hand. He squeezed it absent-mindedly, already drifting back into sleep. She closed her eyes, clinging to the hope that morning would restore clarity. Instead, a quiet understanding settled over her. Whatever truth waited ahead, it was closer than she wanted to admit, and once revealed, nothing would return to the way it had been. Evelyn Carter did not confront the truth immediately. She carried it with her for days, testing its weight, hoping it would dissolve under logic. She watched Daniel closely, noticing how he avoided her eyes when Lena's name came up, how his phone never left his side. The man she had trusted with her life had begun to move like someone guarding a secret. Each quiet moment between them grew heavier, until silence itself felt like a confession. The confirmation arrived without drama. Evelyn found it in the most ordinary way, while folding laundry, while the television murmured in the background, while Daniel was in the shower. His phone vibrated on the bedside table. She had never checked his messages before. The choice felt less like suspicion and more like self-preservation. One glance was enough. The words were brief, unmistakable, and final. Lena's name glowed on the screen, followed by a sentence that stole the air from Evelyn's lungs. It spoke of fear, of consequences, of something irreversible growing inside her. Evelyn sat on the edge of the bed, the phone heavy in her hands. The room felt unfamiliar, as if the walls had shifted while she wasn't looking. When Daniel emerged, towel around his waist, he froze at the sight of her expression. He didn't ask what was wrong. He knew, "What is this?" Evelyn asked quietly, holding out the phone. Her voice did not shake. That frightened him more than anger would have. Daniel's shoulders sagged. He sat beside her, rubbing his temples, searching for words that could soften what had none. "It wasn't planned," he said. "I never meant for it to happen like this." "Like what?" Evelyn asked. "With my best friend?" He flinched. The silence stretched, exposing the truth he no longer tried to deny. When he finally spoke, his voice was small. "Lena is pregnant." The sentence fell between them, final and unforgiving. Evelyn felt something inside her close. A door she hadn't known was still open. She waited for pain, for tears, for the collapse she had imagined. Instead, a calm settled over her, sharp and clear. "How long?" she asked. Daniel answered, each word another fracture. He spoke of loneliness, of mistakes made in moments of weakness, of confusion. He said he still loved Evelyn. He said it meant nothing. Every excuse sounded rehearsed, as if he had been preparing for this moment longer than she realized. Evelyn stood. The room tilted briefly before steadying. She walked to the living room and called Lena. Her hands did not tremble. When Lena arrived, breathless and pale, Evelyn saw the truth written across her face before a word was spoken. "I didn't know how to tell you," Lena whispered, tears filling her eyes. "I was scared." Evelyn looked at her, searching for the friend she had trusted for years. What she saw instead was someone she no longer recognized. "How long were you going to let me live in this lie?" she asked. Lena sobbed, apologizing, reaching out as if closeness could erase betrayal. Daniel tried to intervene, to explain again, but Evelyn raised a hand. The room fell silent. For the first time, she understood how completely alone she had been. Even while surrounded by familiar faces, she walked to the bedroom and returned with her wedding ring. The gold band caught the light, a symbol that had once meant safety. She held it for a moment, remembering the promises spoken with certainty, the future she had believed in without question. Then she slipped it off her finger and placed it on the table between them. "I won't fight for someone who chose to lose me," Evelyn said. Daniel's composure broke. He pleaded, promised change, swore this mistake would never define him. Lena cried harder, murmuring apologies that came too late. Evelyn listened without reacting. Her decision had already been made. She packed a small bag, choosing only what she needed. At the door, she paused, taking one last look at the life she was leaving behind. Daniel stood frozen, the weight of his actions finally visible. Lena sat on the couch, hands over her face, alone in a way she had never expected. Evelyn stepped into the hallway and closed the door behind her. The sound echoed softly, marking the end of something she had once believed unbreakable. As she walked away, she felt grief rise at last, sharp and real, but beneath it was something stronger, a resolve she had never known she possessed. Outside, the night air was cool and steady. Evelyn breathed deeply, unsure of where she was going, only certain she could not stay. Behind her, Daniel's world was unraveling. Ahead of her lay uncertainty, pain, and the quiet promise that survival was possible. She walked forward without looking back, unaware that this departure would ignite a search driven by regret, obsession, and the desperate hope that some losses could still be undone. Daniel Carter did not understand the depth of what he had lost until the apartment grew quiet. The silence was not peaceful. It pressed against him, exposing every careless decision he had made. Evelyn's absence altered the space itself. Her mug was gone from the kitchen counter. Her shoes no longer waited by the door. Each missing detail reminded him that she had not stormed out in anger, but had left with intention that he called her that night. The call went unanswered. He sent messages that began with apologies and ended with desperation. Hours passed without a reply. By morning, anxiety replaced denial. Daniel told himself she only needed time, that she would return once emotions cooled. Yet as the days stretched on, the certainty he relied on began to fracture. Lena called him repeatedly, her voice unsteady, her fear unmistakable. Daniel avoided her. The reality of her pregnancy, once an abstract problem he believed he could manage, now felt suffocating. When he finally answered, he spoke without warmth. "I can't deal with this right now," he said, ending the call before she could respond. For the first time, Lena realized she was facing the consequences alone. Days turned into a restless blur. Daniel went to Evelyn's workplace, hoping she might still be there, clinging to routine. Her colleagues looked at him with polite confusion. She had taken leave, they said. No further details. He drove past places they had frequented together, cafes and parks heavy with memory. Each stop deepened his regret. He had taken her loyalty as permanence, never considering how easily trust, once broken, could disappear entirely. Margaret Carter confronted him after a week of silence. She did not raise her voice. She did not accuse. She simply asked, "Where is your wife?" The question carried more weight than anger ever could. Daniel confessed everything, his words tumbling out in shame. Margaret listened, her expression grave. "You didn't lose her when she left," she said. "You lost her when you decided your comfort mattered more than her dignity." Her words stayed with him, sharp and unavoidable. That night, Daniel dreamed of Evelyn standing just beyond his reach, her face calm, unrecognizing. He woke with the certainty that love did not vanish suddenly. It eroded, worn away by neglect and betrayal. Evelyn, meanwhile, had chosen invisibility. She stayed in a small rented room across town, one that held no memories. The days were quiet, measured. She avoided familiar streets and mutual friends, protecting herself from explanations she was not ready to give. At night, the pain surfaced, but she faced it alone, determined not to let it pull her back. Ryan Hale noticed her absence first. When Evelyn returned briefly to collect paperwork, he offered a simple nod of understanding. He did not ask questions. His restraint felt like respect, something she had not realized she missed. Their conversations remained professional, grounded, free of expectation. It was enough that Daniel's search grew frantic. He checked bank records, called distant relatives, even waited outside places he thought she might pass. Each failed attempt chipped away at his composure. The man who once controlled every aspect of his life now reacted to it, driven by fear rather than confidence. Lena attempted to reach Evelyn, leaving messages filled with remorse. None were answered. The friendship she had taken for granted had dissolved as completely as the marriage. Alone in her apartment, Lena confronted the truth she had avoided. Being chosen in secrecy was never the same as being chosen openly. One evening, Daniel sat alone in the darkened apartment, staring at the ring still resting on the table where Evelyn had left it. He realized then that searching for her was not about reconciliation alone. It was about absolution, about proving to himself that he was not the man his actions suggested. The possibility that Evelyn might never return terrified him more than any punishment. At last, through a chance conversation and quiet persistence, Daniel discovered where Evelyn was staying. The knowledge brought no relief, only dread. He drove to the address, but remained in his car, watching the building from across the street. He imagined her inside, living without him, learning how to breathe again. Daniel rested his head against the steering wheel, overwhelmed by the certainty that regret could not rewrite the past. Still, he waited, caught between the desire to see her and the fear that she had already moved beyond his reach. As the light in her window flickered on, he understood that the next step would define not only what he wanted, but what he deserved. Evelyn Carter sensed Daniel before she saw him. Some awareness sharpened by hurt made her pause as she stepped out of the building, the evening air brushing her face. When she looked up, he was standing across the street, uncertain, smaller than she remembered. For a moment, neither moved. The city continued around them, indifferent to the reckoning about to unfold. Daniel crossed the distance slowly, as if afraid she might disappear if he hurried. "Evelyn," he said, her name breaking slightly as it left his mouth. "I didn't come to force anything. I needed to see you." She studied him with a calm that surprised even herself. The anger she once imagined was gone, replaced by a quiet clarity. "You've seen me," she replied. "What is it you're hoping for now?" Daniel struggled to meet her eyes. "I want to apologize. Not to fix things, not to erase what I did, just to tell you that I understand what I destroyed." He paused, swallowing hard. "I searched everywhere because I couldn't accept that you left without a word. But I know now. You didn't owe me one." Evelyn listened without interruption. She noticed the absence of excuses, the way his words no longer tried to shift blame. That, more than anything, told her how much had changed. Still, understanding came too late. "I loved you," she said evenly. "Enough to ignore what felt wrong. Enough to trust the people closest to me without question. When that trust broke, it took something with it that can't be repaired." Daniel nodded, tears gathering but unhidden. "I know, and I'll live with that." He glanced at her hands, bare of rings, steady at her sides. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to know that losing you was the consequence I deserved." Behind him, a car passed, its headlights briefly illuminating his face. Evelyn felt the finality of the moment settle. She did not feel victorious, only free. "I hope you learn from this," she said. "Not for me, but for whoever you become after." Daniel stepped back, understanding the dismissal for what it was. He turned away without protest, carrying with him the weight of a future shaped by regret. Evelyn watched until he disappeared from view. She did not follow. She returned to her room, closed the door, and allowed herself a long breath. The confrontation had not reopened her wounds. It had sealed them. Closure, she realized, did not always arrive with reconciliation. Sometimes it came with boundaries firmly held. Lena Brooks faced her own reckoning alone. The pregnancy she once believed would secure affection only magnified her isolation. Daniel's distance was unmistakable. His focus turned inward. Friends withdrew, and silence filled the spaces where validation once lived. She thought of Evelyn often, understanding too late the cost of envy and betrayal. Some apologies, she learned, had no recipient. Days passed, and Evelyn settled into a life defined by intention rather than reaction. She returned to work, her focus sharpened. Ryan Hale remained a quiet constant, respectful and observant. offering conversation without intrusion. Evelyn appreciated the simplicity of it. Healing did not demand grand gestures. It required consistency. Margaret Carter sent a letter. It contained no defense of her son, only acknowledgement of Evelyn's strength and an apology offered without expectation. Evelyn read it carefully, then placed it in a drawer. Forgiveness, she decided, could exist without proximity. One evening, Evelyn stood by her window, watching the city lights pulse with possibility. The pain that once dominated her thoughts had softened into memory. She knew her story would always include loss, but it would no longer be defined by it. Love, she had learned, was not proven by endurance alone. It was proven by respect, honesty, and the courage to walk away when those were absent. Yes, she turned off the light and prepared for rest. Evelyn felt something unfamiliar yet welcome, a quiet confidence in the future. She did not know who she would become next, only that she would never again accept a love that required her to disappear. The search that had consumed Daniel was over, but Evelyn's journey, finally her own, was just beginning.